The Orphanage on the Hill by Miss Madforcake 41. It was a very dark night, where the moon was lost and the wind was silent. The orphanage sat on top of a hill where the grass was dark and the trees were bare. The orphans inside were sleeping, whilst the staff enjoyed watching the TV in the staff room. A few miles away, a man stood in the darkness next to his car. His phone has no reception, so he walked into the darkness to find himself in front of the giant iron gates. He rang the doorbell and waited for anyone to come to his aid. After a while, a skinny man came to the gates and asked, "What do you want?" The man spoke, his voice as cold as ice. "Sir, I'm looking for help. My car is stopped and would not start again." The skinny man then answered, "Okay, you may use a phone and stay here for the night, as the mechanics are out until tomorrow." The man followed the skinny man up to the front door and made him follow the skinny man into the staff room, which he then introduced himself and 3 other members of staff. He told the members of staff that his name was Sean Epling, and that he was going to stay the night, as he has no way to get home. One of the staff said jokingly, "I hope we don't have any trouble with you." Sean then muttered under his breath, "You won't live long enough for anyone to cause you trouble again." Sean started to laugh. It was half an hour later when Sean pulled out a small shotgun and attached a silencer. He entered the staff room and sat at the back of the room. He pulled out the weapon. The TV was on a high volume as the staff was watching a horror film. Each fire was hidden by a jump scare or a loud noise. All 4 members of staff were sat at different distances away from the TV. So each member did not realise the shootings until, of course, they got shot. The first woman was easy. She was skinny and had a small bald spot, and that's the part where Sean aimed. He opened fire and the bullet went through the back of her head, and the bullet must have went down a bit as it went through her eye. She went forward a bit but was caught by Sean, and he pulled her back into her seat. He then moved forward to the sink and poured a drink and added another clear liquid and offered it to the skinny man. He accepted and drank the white water liquid. Sean muttered so the skinny man could hear, "Thanks for helping. In return, you may die slowly." When Sean said this, he pulled out his weapon and shot the guy in front 3 times in the chest and once in the head. One more person and the room was clear. This made Sean smile, and he started laughing. He laughed walking to the front of the room where the 21-year-old was sitting. He laughed when he was aiming and the woman was looking into the silencer. He laughed when he pulled the trigger and the young woman fell back into her chair. At this point, the skinny man closed his eyes and whispered, "No, not the children. Please." Sean explored the house to find other tools, but first he was hungry. He looked in the fridge. He found what you would expect: milk, cheese, sandwiches, and butter. He got the milk and found the glass. He also found cereal and a bowl and made some cereal and a glass of milk. After he finished the milk, a child came into the kitchen, at which point he looked at him and the child looked at Sean. The young boy, maybe 7 or 8, rubbed his eyes and asked what he was doing, but before the child could finish his sentence, a knife had been taken from the rack and was stabbed in the back of the child. The child then had his top taken off his back and shoved in his mouth, creating a gag so the child could not scream, although Sean enjoyed listening to the final screams and words of his victims. But he liked killing undetected even more, and he knew the child's screams would alert the other orphans in the building. He ate his cereal and drank his milk. and then made his way to the garage, where he found a bag. He also found a trowel and a fork and a chainsaw. He screamed with delight, "Oh my God, I found a chainsaw!" He was looking down at the new equipment he acquired and was grinning to himself. He then looked up and saw a teenager sitting on a windowsill. Using a small stone, Sean threw it at the window, signalling for the young girl to come down. She told him to wait there, and a few moments later she came down and talked to Sean. Sean told the teen that his car was damaged a few miles down, and that he would be staying the night with the permission of the skinny man. He also stated that the teenager would go against his wishes and would try to sneak out. "I was wondering what is life if you don't take risks, so come with me and I shall help you to sneak out," the skinny man said. "This is where to smoke if needed, and I'm guessing you smoke to be rebellious, so come on and smoke with me." "I have the best way to also get high," Sean said. The teen says, "Yeah? Do tell." Sean then replies with a big grin on his face, "Okay, but you can't tell anyone. This is what the pros do. You sniff petrol." He takes the teen to the smoking point. He then purposely spills petrol on her and tells her that it will come out of her clothes. Near to the smoking pit is a place to light a bonfire. He gets the teen girl to light the fire. She does so. She then goes in to snog Sean. Her tongue, stuck out ready to enter his mouth, was cut short after he takes the knife used to murder that young boy, which he had placed in the back of his trousers to cut her tongue off. She tried to speak, but the words were inaudible. Sean then pushes her into the bonfire and decides to use a chainsaw, as it was too far away from the orphanage for anyone to hear. He pulled her from the fire and put out the flames. He then, giggling to himself, stripped off her clothes and started to cut off her legs, then her arms. Finally, before she took her last breath and closed her eyes for the last time, the chainsaw was placed at the neck and cut down. Before the cut was complete, he ripped off her head and walked towards a pole. He made a cross with a piece of branch and put one of her arms, one of her legs and her head placed on top. He then laughed and spoke to who seemed like another person. "Sam, look at what we made." There was no one else there. He took a photo on her phone and set it as a lock screen, so when the body was discovered, they will know the art that Sean created. He walked back to the orphanage with the bloody knife back of his trousers, the gardening tools in his bag, and the chainsaw was left at the base of where the art was displayed. Once back in the orphanage, he walked upstairs, humming to himself. He walked into a bathroom where a shower cap lay alone on a shelf. He then said, "Sam, will this do?" He waited a few seconds, where he said, "Okay." He went into a room where 10 to 12 beds lay, each accompanied by an orphan. He thought to himself, how will he murder every one of them without the others noticing? He then goes into the bathroom, and in one of the showers he finds deodorant. This certain type states that if the spray comes into contact with the mouth, the person will become unconscious, and to seek medical advice. Sean uses the deodorant to knock out the first kid, who was a 5-year-old boy. The boy is then suffocated with the shower cap. Sean then realizes that this procedure takes too long, so he enters the room and locks the door, and murders as many children as possible before 3 wake up and sees that he is suffocating the other children with shower caps. He has no choice now but to shoot all 3. Instead of finish suffocating another 4-year-old, he simply takes his head with one hand and his body with his other arm. This child wakes up. The child then says to Sean, "Are you and my father coming to collect me?" Sean then says, whispering in his ear, "No, but you will meet your father in the pits of hell," twisting his head and breaking his neck, in the eyes of the 3 children that are awake. These children are 10, 12, and a little brother of 5. The child that is 12 came at the murderer in a foolish attempt to apprehend the killer, but doing so only sealed his fate when Sean whipped his hand around, slicing the 12-year-old's neck, killing him instantly. His younger brother ran to his older in despair and in grief, shouting, "No! Wake up!" The killer walked past and dug the knife into the 5-year-old's skull. The 10-year-old, frightened, fell to his knees, praying to his God. The killer then pistol whipped the 10-year-old, knocking him out. Sean then put the kid face up and got out the trowel. Sean used the trowel to scoop out the kid's eyeballs and put the fork into his brain. He picked up the eyeballs and shoved them in the mouth of the 2 other boys that was his brothers. He then whispered to himself, "Now they're closer than ever." Sean unlocked the room and walked out ready to go into the girls' room. He reloaded his weapon and went to the bedside of all 6 girls whose ages were between 3 and 9. He shot each girl in the head. He then found their toy dolls at the end of the room. He removed their legs and shoved each leg in the eyes of each girl. It was Monday morning, and he phoned the mechanic to fix his car, and by 12 the mechanic had arrived at his car. Once he had fixed the car, Sean had knocked the mechanic out and placed his head under the car wheel. Sean then drove at full speed over the mechanic's head and popping it like a balloon. The mechanic's body was taken to the orphanage, and that is where it stays. Sean did this every year 3 days after Christmas. The orphanage is now full of dead bodies and lost souls who haunt the orphanage. Their souls only to be freed when the blood of Sean hits the orphanage grounds. Many have been there, but only to be scared off by what was a loving home for abandoned children, but now the site of a mass murder burial ground. And that, my friends, is what happened to the old orphanage on the hill.